So I have a way of making bread, and actually I'm not going to completely change. I'm not going to change the way I do my baguette. I'm not going to change the way I do my ciabatta, my challah, my pain de mie, my brioche. I'm not going to change the way I do my sourdough. However, I'm going to give you sourdough for dummies. Is that, well, not that I think you are. My point being, I'm going to take all the complication and all the science out of it. And I'm going to explain to you what's truly important in your sourdough. The biggest part of this video is just right now. Everything else is a matter of being patient and waiting. Everything else is going to be very, very simple. So we are going to make a sourdough without yeast. We're going to make it with a starter. Most bakers make it with a combination of starter and yeast. I'm a big believer that if you're going to use a starter, use a starter. If you're going to use yeast, use yeast. But both just quite doesn't work for me for many reasons. So I have my starter right here, which I fed, okay, and that's what I'm going to use part of, and in my sourdough. So we're gonna understand that sourdough is a process where we're mixing flour, water, and starter, allowing all of that to interact and start eating the gluten and creating more gluten into the bread without kneading. What happens when you knead bread is the kneading process develop glutens. When you don't knead and you don't develop those glutens, the gases don't manifest themselves and the dough doesn't rise. So I'm gonna screw what I just said. That's science, okay? I am gonna just try and do it and take all the science completely out of it and keep in mind few things. Starter, if you don't have one, we can probably share one with you at some point, or my lovely wife will give you the recipe that was the starter that my family has used. Our starter is over 130 years old and we've been feeding it. The strain is that I have some at home, I have buckets in the restaurant. So I took some of these, I put it right here, and then I fed it. The act of feeding it, can you hear this? Look at that. That starter is now active. That starter was, this is not active right now, but I'm not gonna let it die. I took some of these, and all I added to this is water and flour. The rule is 1-1-1 when you are feeding your starter, meaning that if you take a third of a cup, and you need a third of a cup, in this instance we need a quarter cup. I'm gonna take a quarter cup, of my starter, I'm gonna put it in here, I'm gonna add a quarter cup of flour, I'm gonna go add a quarter cup of water, I'm gonna stir it, I'm gonna close it, and I'm gonna let it double up at least. Oh, it smells like a beer. It almost smells like a combination of a beer, an apple, and vinegar. That's what it will smell like. And what a lot of the times they'll tell you put a rubber band around it so you can see it rise. Truly, the starter will talk to you. Once you open it, you want to start working, not quickly, but you want to start working on it. So the starter has to be active. If you put your starter in here and it's not active, you're going to mess up your bread. So rule number 1, active starter. Rule number 2, when you activate your starter, make sure you feed it 1-1-1. Okay? I am going to now follow, this is where this is very important. It took me a long fucking time to develop this, so don't mess up the recipe. It's 4 cups of flour, and I want these 4 cups almost exact, and a and 2 tablespoons. 1, 2. I know this looks like a teaspoon, but it's a heaping teaspoon. I'm gonna right now create a well in my a well in here. I'm gonna take my salt, 1 teaspoon of salt, and I'm gonna season my flour right on top of it. Now this needs a 1/4 cup of starter. So here's the deal. I'm gonna take this 1/4 cup. Look at that. Look how active it is. And I'm gonna put it right here. This is really the best yeast in the world, you know? And this is a strain that's, like I said, 130 years old. I'm going to now take in my well 1 1/4 cup, 1 1/2 cup warm water. Do not use bottled water, use just water from your faucet. And your water is really going to change depending on what's coming out from the city. So what I did is that I tried the water at different times, at different intervals, just to sort of play with it in order to develop what I think is a master recipe of how this should be. Okay, so far, recap. We took our starter. If you don't have starter, we might give you some. We'll share a recipe how to make one. Now, we fed our starter. We let it activate. That's going to take 2 to 3 to 4, 5 hours. It depends on the temperature, depends on the water. All I want to do is make sure that it rises up. I have my flour, all-purpose, high-gluten flour, organic flour, unbromated, unbleached flour. And I season my flour on the top. Salt. Salt does not kill yeast, but it just slows down the rising. And for many, many years, I wouldn't salt my sourdough. And I still don't right now, except that I'm going to do it for this recipe. Because the way I do my sourdough and the way I'm doing right now are night and day. This is a fast process, but it's just as good. We can't stop eating this fucking bread at home. So I took the technicalities and the complications out. I'm gonna take that water and reactivate my yeast in here, in my hole. The next thing I need to know is what's called low hydration and high hydration bread. Low hydration bread, meaning that I put less water. My dough, when it's going to be stiff, it's going to hard to work. You can do that if you want a bread that's stiff with no bubbles inside. If you want a bread that's airier inside, you need to have a high hydration bread. That means a little bit more water. That means your dough is going to be sticky. The problem with high hydration bread, if your measurements are off, when it rises and it's sticky, it will collapse on you. I want you to think of yeast as lifting weights. So the starter is there and it's going to lift this dough. And as it's lifting it, if you mess with it too much, it's going to collapse. It can't hang on. So this is why it's so important. This is a medium hydration sourdough, which means I still have some density. I'm still going to develop some air pockets. So I have some substance. So I have some different textures in my bread. I'm going to use my fork. I'm going to incorporate all of this in here. And you see, I'm doing it in my bowl. And I at the same time turning it. This is the most complicated and this is the most tedious part of what you have to do. Everything after this requires nothing but a little patience. Meaning we're gonna let the dough sit at what we're gonna let the dough sleep, you know, in the refrigerator for 8 hours, and we're gonna let the dough rise overnight for 10 hours. And in the morning, we're gonna bake this bread. You see what's happening in here? Before I knead my bread, I wanna just make sure I'm incorporating all the flour in my bread. And right now, I'm gonna go in here. So how do I know when I'm ready, when my dough is ready? That's a question that I'm asked a lot. I know it when there is no more flour in my bowl. All the humidity is picking up all that flour in the bowl. And you'll see this, now this is not sexy, but it was very important to incorporate. And what I'm trying to do here is minimize my kneading of this sourdough. Right here. So as I work my bread, I'm realizing right now that the moisture that I have inside is coming outside. You see how it's picking up all the flour? And the part of here is that I'm not going to knead it too much. I'm going to knead it just enough because I am not worried about the gluten developing in the bread. Because there's two ways of developing gluten, through kneading or through resting. My bread is going to rest for 8 hours. It's going to develop all the gas I need in the world through the glutens. There are two types of flour, there's two types of proteins in flour, and those are the ones I'm trying to get out. So now that I did this, here is my mother's trick. Look, my fingers in here, I'm creating, look at that. I'm just creating little holes in there. As the bread rests, and as the flour and water get incorporated into each other, as that starting to activate, all of it is going to form. So this is, what I want you to do is, as you do this, make sure you feel that it's slightly wet, because if it's very, very dry, you can still do it. It will take a lot for it to rise, but it will also, I want you, come here, can you come here, please? See how it broke down a little bit? That means I need to mix it a little bit more. And look how it's shaping back up. Okay? All I'm doing in here is just forming a rough ball in here. Rough ball. No flour, nothing on here except for this is my water right here. Next time we should have a towel ready to go. But this is all good. I'm gonna take this, cover it, and I'm gonna put it in the refrigerator.